Welcome back, everyone, to the Deep Dive. This time, we're taking a look at something we know you're interested in, and that's the connection between autism and fibromyalgia.
Yeah.
So to help us with this, we've got some excerpts from the website Cheap ABA,
Mm.
and in particular, their article called Autism and Fibromyalgia, The Hidden Connection.
At first glance, you might think, well, what could these two conditions possibly have to do with each other?
Mm.
Autism, being a condition that affects social communication and behavior,
Right.
and then fibromyalgia, which is characterized by this widespread pain and fatigue. But as we start digging into this a little bit,
Yeah.
I think you're going to see there's actually quite a bit more overlap than you might initially think.
I've always been so fascinated by, how the brain and the body sort of interact.
Yeah.
And so this whole idea that there could be a connection between autism and fibromyalgia just, I don't know, it really makes me think that there's something else going on behind the scenes, kind of this intricate dance.
Absolutely. And,
Yeah.
and one of the first things that this article points out is a statistic that's pretty startling.
Okay.
It says that 12% of autistic individuals
Wow.
also experience fibromyalgia.
That's huge. That is a really big number when you think about the fact that only 2% of the general population experiences fibromyalgia.
Right.
So that means that if you have autism, you're significantly more likely to also experience fibromyalgia. And I think that's a really
Right.
crucial piece of information to have.
Absolutely. And the article digs into some possible explanations for this really high comorbidity.
Okay.
And one of the first things they talk about is sensory processing difficulties, which we know is common for those on the autism spectrum.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we know that autism impacts sensory processing, but what you might not realize is just how much that can actually impact your experience of pain.
Right.
So think about it. If you're constantly being bombarded by sensory overload, it's like your nervous system is basically stuck in this overdrive mode. And so the idea is that this kind of frequent sensory overload could actually contribute to the chronic pain and fatigue that are really the hallmarks of fibromyalgia.
That's exactly it. So it's almost like this domino effect where the overload stresses your nervous system.
Right.
And then ultimately that stress ends up getting expressed in your body as physical pain.
So it's not just that these conditions, happen to occur together, just by chance or anything like that.
Right.
There could be some deeper shared biological basis for both.
Right.
So then the article goes on to talk about another potential connection, and that is neuroinflammation.
Yeah.
Now, this one sounds a little bit complex. So
Yeah.
can you break it down for us a little bit?
Sure. You can think of neuroinflammation kind of like a low-grade fire that's constantly burning in your nervous system.
Okay.
So that means there's inflammation happening. And over time, this inflammation can actually lead to damage and contribute to the pain and fatigue that you're experiencing. And what's really interesting is that there are studies out there suggesting that neuroinflammation could be this common thread in both autism and fibromyalgia.
Wow.
So, another potential link.
Okay, so another potential link the article brings up is dysautonomia.
Yeah.
Now, I'm guessing that that's probably more common than a lot of us realize.
It is. It is. And basically what it means is that your autonomic nervous system, so that's the system that controls things like your heart rate, your blood pressure, digestion, isn't really functioning as it should.
Okay, so how does a malfunctioning autonomic nervous system tie into all of this?
Well, as the article explains, dysautonomia is often seen in autistic individuals.
Okay.
And because the autonomic nervous system also plays a role in how we perceive pain, it makes sense that if the system's not working properly, it could be contributing to that chronic pain that people with fibromyalgia experience.
Okay, so we've got these three potential explanations: sensory processing difficulties, neuroinflammation, and dysautonomia. And it sounds like all of these could be sort of weaving together to create this link between autism and fibromyalgia.
Yeah.
And that's a lot to process, but, understanding these mechanisms, it's really crucial for us to, figure out how to, address this.
Absolutely. And, knowing about these potential links is absolutely crucial, especially for you listening right now.
Right.
Because early intervention is so important.
Right.
So if you are experiencing chronic pain or fatigue or maybe some other potential fibromyalgia symptoms alongside your autism, it is so important that you talk to your doctor.
Yeah.
Don't just brush it off as, oh, this is just part of being autistic.
That's such a good point, because it's so easy to just dismiss things when you think they're just part of who you are.
Exactly.
But this deep dive is really showing us that it's so important to be aware of these connections,
Yeah.
so that we can advocate for ourselves and get the right kind of support.
Absolutely. It's about being proactive and recognizing that early detection can really, truly, significantly impact how you manage these symptoms.
Yeah.
It's not just about living with them. It's about finding ways to thrive.
Okay, so we've laid the groundwork, we've talked about this potential link, we've explored some possible explanations, but before we go on to really talk about, what you can do, what this means for you, I think we need to delve a little bit deeper into some of these concepts.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's do that.
Okay. One of the things that really stuck out to me as we were getting ready for this deep dive was the section on the hidden truth revealed, uncovering the unique challenges of women on the spectrum. It's just so important for us to recognize that both autism and fibromyalgia can present so differently depending on whether you're male or female.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And it just makes you realize how much we still don't know about these conditions and how they impact different people. I've heard that women with autism are often diagnosed later in life or sometimes even misdiagnosed entirely because...
Their symptoms can be a lot more subtle or masked compared to men.
Exactly. And if we're not even diagnosing autism effectively in women,
Right.
then the chances of us recognizing and addressing fibromyalgia when it occurs alongside autism
Yeah.
become even smaller. So it's this kind of,
It's like a double
whammy of being overlooked.
Yeah, and it's almost like, we as like the medical community have this default picture in our minds of what autism looks like.
Yeah.
And if you don't fit that picture, then, your struggles might just get completely missed.
Right.
And so I think that's a really big issue, especially for you listening, if you're a woman who suspects that you might have both of these conditions.
Absolutely. And if you are listening and you're a woman and you relate to any of this,
Yeah.
don't be afraid to advocate for yourself.
Right.
Ask your doctor about specific tests for fibromyalgia and push for a proper evaluation. If you feel dismissed, get a second opinion.
Yeah.
Your health and well-being are worth fighting for.
It's like anything, the more we understand about a condition, the better equipped we are to address it, right? And if we're not even recognizing the condition in the first place, then we're missing this huge opportunity to provide support and treatment.
And this really speaks to just this broader issue of gender disparities in healthcare.
Yeah.
Particularly when it comes to conditions that are often misunderstood or dismissed as being psychosomatic.
Right.
So there's a lot of work to be done to make sure that women's pain and their experiences are taken seriously.
Yeah, for sure. But let's not get bogged down in sort of all the problems.
Right.
Let's talk about solutions, right? So the cheap ABA material, they touch on a bunch of different strategies for managing both autism and fibromyalgia.
Yeah.
But I think one of the things that they really emphasize is finding what works for you. There's no one-size-fits-all approach.
Right, and it really starts with having these really open and honest conversations with your healthcare provider.
Yeah.
Tell them about your symptoms, what you're experiencing, what your concerns are.
Right.
Don't be afraid to ask questions and advocate for the type of care that feels right for you.
Okay, so beyond traditional medical care,
Yeah.
I'm curious about what other kinds of approaches might be helpful.
Okay.
So the article mentions things like therapy, support groups, and lifestyle modifications.
Yeah, all of those can be incredibly beneficial. Therapy can help you develop tools and strategies to cope with stress, anxiety, sensory overload.
Right.
Support groups can give you this sense of community and shared understanding,
Yeah.
which is so validating.
Yeah.
And then, lifestyle modifications, things like regular exercise, a healthy diet, prioritizing sleep, those can have this really positive impact on both your physical and mental health.
So it's really all about finding that balance between the medical interventions,
Right.
the therapeutic support, and these self-care strategies.
Absolutely. And it's not about trying to fix everything at once.
It's about taking these small steps, making gradual changes that feel sustainable for you.
Right.
It's a journey, not a destination.
Yeah.
There's going to be good days and bad days. Sometimes you'll feel like you're making progress. Sometimes you might feel stuck.
Yeah.
But if you stay informed, if you're proactive, and if you're kind to yourself,
Yeah.
you can navigate those challenges and build a life that feels fulfilling for you.
So speaking of staying informed,
Yeah.
one of the things that really struck me about the cheap ABA material was just the sheer number of different conditions and challenges that seem to be kind of intertwined with autism.
Right.
It's like peeling back layers of an onion, right?
Yeah.
They cover everything from sleep disorders and sensory sensitivities
Right.
to the impact of religious trauma and the unique challenges that autistic women face.
It's really fascinating. They place a lot of emphasis on the lived experiences of autistic individuals.
So, the website includes personal stories, blog posts, resources that really go beyond these clinical definitions of autism
Right.
and really capture the human side of it.
Yeah.
You really get this sense of the diversity within the autistic community and how everyone's journey is so unique.
I think that's so important because it's so easy to get caught up in all the medical jargon and the statistics.
Right.
But at the end of the day, we're talking about real people
Yes.
with real lives, real struggles, and real triumphs.
Absolutely.
And, one of the things that really resonated with me was this discussion of masking.
Yeah.
Can you explain that a little bit more for our listener? What does that actually mean?
Yeah. Masking is, well, it's basically the act of kind of suppressing or camouflaging your autistic traits to try to fit in with social expectations.
Mm,
It's almost like putting on this performance,
okay.
constantly trying to appear normal,
Right.
even when it's incredibly emotionally exhausting.
Wow, that sounds so draining. And I can only imagine that if you're also dealing with, the fatigue and the pain of fibromyalgia,
Right.
that could really take a toll.
It absolutely does. It's like adding this extra layer of stress
Yeah.
on top of this system that's already kind of overloaded.
Right.
And so, that's one of the things that the Cheap ABA article really stresses, the importance of recognizing and addressing masking as part of this holistic approach to managing both conditions.
Okay.
Because, if you are masking, it really could be contributing to your overall experience of pain and discomfort.
So then what can someone do if they realize, oh, okay, I am masking?
Yeah.
How do they even begin to sort of alleviate that pressure?
Well, I think it starts with self-awareness.
Okay.
Recognizing when you're doing it and why you're doing it.
Right.
That's really that crucial first step.
Okay.
And then it's about finding those safe spaces where you can be your authentic self.
Right.
Maybe that's with family or close friends or maybe a support group. But those spaces are so valuable for kind of letting go of that constant pressure to perform.
And I imagine that therapy could also be a really valuable resource for, you know, learning to unmask and navigate these social situations without feeling like you have to hide who you are.
Absolutely. A therapist who specializes in autism can really provide guidance and support throughout that process.
Right.
They can help you understand your own masking behaviors
Yeah.
and develop coping mechanisms that feel right for you.
Okay.
And don't underestimate the power of books and online resources as well.
Oh, yeah.
There's a wealth of information out there that can offer these really practical tips and strategies for managing masking.
One of the things that I really took away from the Cheap ABA website was just this emphasis on self-advocacy.
Oh, yeah.
They talk a lot about, autistic individuals really needing to be active participants in their own care
Yes.
and speaking up for their needs.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing that you are your own best advocate
Right.
and you have a voice that deserves to be heard.
And it's not just about advocating for yourself. It's also about advocating for, the broader autism community.
Exactly.
It's about pushing for change on a larger scale so that everyone, regardless of their neurotype, can live, a really fulfilling and meaningful life.
That's it. It's about challenging that stigma, promoting acceptance, advocating for policies that support neurodiversity.
Yeah.
It's about creating a world where everyone feels seen, heard, and valued for exactly who they are.
This has been such an insightful deep dive.
It has.
I feel like I've learned so much about this complex interplay between autism and fibromyalgia and, really the importance of empathy and awareness and advocacy.
It's so important.
And I think it's really important to remember that knowledge is just the first step.
It is.
It's what we do with that knowledge
Right.
that really matters.
Absolutely.
So, to you listening out there,
Yeah.
I really encourage you to take what you've learned today and use it to make a positive difference in your own life.
Yes.
And in the lives of others. You're not alone on this journey.
You're not.
There are resources available. There are communities that are ready to welcome you.
Yeah.
And there is hope for a brighter future.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the connection between autism and fibromyalgia.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
We'll be back next week with another fascinating topic.
Yes, we will.
Curated just for you.
Looking forward to it.
Until then, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep the conversation going.